Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and the very first feeling that arrives is not dread, not the mental inventory of everything unresolved, everything that could go wrong, everything waiting to make a demand of you. Imagine instead that the first thing you notice is steadiness, a quiet internal stillness that does not depend on your circumstances being favorable, your plans being confirmed, or the people around you behaving the way you need them to. That is not a fantasy reserved for people who have withdrawn from ordinary life. It is a state that is built, deliberately, through specific changes in how you interpret what happens to you, how you respond to what you cannot control, and how you show up in the small moments that most people are passing through completely on autopilot. The ancient world's greatest thinkers spent their entire lives studying this question, not as an intellectual game, but as a genuine survival necessity. Because the world they were navigating, plague, war, political collapse, personal loss, the complete unpredictability of a life before modern comfort and safety, demanded a quality of inner stability that had to be constructed, not simply hoped for. What they discovered about peace was not theoretical, it was tested in the hardest conditions. And what they consistently found was this: peace is not given to you by your circumstances. It is something you build internally through the quality of your thinking and the discipline of your response. In this video, we are covering 4 principles, not tips or motivational phrases, but foundational principles drawn from the deepest veins of ancient wisdom that can genuinely change the texture of your daily experience if you are willing to apply them honestly. Not just hear them, apply them. The hearing costs nothing and changes nothing. The application is where everything shifts. If this is already finding something in you, subscribe to the Stoic Truth right now and hit the notification bell. Every week on this channel, we bring you the depth of ancient philosophy applied to the real challenges of a modern life. Stay with me through every principle. Principle 1. Accept that life is unpredictable. And find your power in that acceptance. Let me describe a specific kind of suffering that almost nobody names directly, because naming it might be the most useful thing I do in this entire video. It is not the suffering that comes from things being hard. Hard things are survivable, and most people, if they are honest with themselves, already know that. The suffering I am describing is the suffering that comes from the gap between what you expected to happen and what actually happened, between the version of the world you constructed in your mind and the version that reality delivered, between how you needed someone to behave and how they actually behaved. Trace back almost any moment of genuine anxiety or frustration in your life, and you will find this gap at the center of it. Not simply that something difficult occurred, but that something occurred that violated your expectation of how things should go. The pain is almost never purely about the event itself. It is about the collision between the event and the model of reality you were carrying into it. Heraclitus of Ephesus, the pre-Socratic philosopher who lived 5 centuries before the Common Era, wrote something that cuts directly to the heart of this. He wrote, "Everything flows and nothing stays." He also said, "You cannot step into the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and you are not the same person." What he was pointing toward was not a reason for despair, but an invitation to stop arguing with the fundamental nature of existence. Reality is always moving. Change is not an interruption of the normal order. Change is the normal order. The person who builds their sense of stability on the expectation that things will remain as they are is building on sand. And when the tide comes, as it always does, they find themselves not just dealing with what changed, but dealing with what changed and the additional weight of having been wrong about the nature of reality itself. Plato took this insight further in his dialogue Phaedo, where he has Socrates speak about the nature of what is truly worth our attachment. Socrates, on the day of his own death, tells his friends, "The unexamined life is not worth living, but equally, the life that examines only what is external and attaches its peace to what is always changing will never find what it is looking for." He was describing the fundamental error of placing your inner stability in the hands of outer circumstances. Plato's entire philosophical project was built around the distinction between the permanent and the impermanent. And Carl Jung, writing in the 20th century but drawing explicitly on ancient tradition, said this in a way that should stop you. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. What he was describing is the experience most people have of feeling as though life is happening to them, as though external events have the power to determine their inner state without their consent. Jung's point was that this experience of being at the mercy of circumstance is almost always at its root a failure of self-knowledge. When you do not understand the patterns inside you, the expectations you carry, the stories you tell about how things should go, the automatic reactions that fire before awareness catches up, those patterns run you. You call it bad luck. You call it difficult circumstances. But it is your own unconscious machinery, operating below the level of awareness, responding to a world it has decided is supposed to behave differently than it does. Making that machinery conscious is the beginning of genuine equanimity, not the removal of difficulty, not the elimination of disappointment. The growing ability to catch the gap between expectation and reality before it becomes suffering, to see it clearly, name it honestly, and choose a response rather than simply having one. Begin practicing this today in the small things. The meeting that overran, the plan that changed without your input, the person who did not respond the way you hoped. Instead of the immediate internal resistance, which is real and costs you something real, try a single question. Given that this is what is actually here right now, what is the most useful thing I can do? Not what should have happened, not who should have behaved differently. Given reality as it currently and actually is, what is my next best move? That question practiced consistently is one of the most powerful daily habits the ancient world ever produced, and the discipline of asking it in small moments is what builds the capacity to ask it in the large ones. Principle 2. Choose progress over perfection. Because perfection is a form of fear. There is a kind of paralysis that affects intelligent, self-aware people more than almost anyone else. From the outside, it does not look like paralysis. It looks like preparation. It looks like high standards. It looks like the careful caution of someone who wants to do things properly. But underneath that reasonable surface, if you are genuinely honest with yourself, there is something else operating. And you already know what it is. It is fear. Specifically the fear that if you try and fail, something about your identity, your sense of yourself as capable, as worthy of the life you want, as someone whose attempts at things deserve to succeed will be permanently diminished. Perfectionism is not a standard. It is a shield. And the price of carrying that shield is everything you would have built if you had put it down. Aristotle, in the Nicomachean Ethics, wrote one of the most practically important sentences in the history of philosophy. He wrote, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. This is not motivational language. This is a precise description of how character is actually formed. Aristotle's entire theory of virtue was built around the concept of hexis, a stable disposition that is developed through repeated action, not through thinking about the right thing, intending the right thing, or admiring the right thing in other people. You become courageous by doing courageous things. You become disciplined by doing disciplined things. You become the person you want to be by behaving repeatedly and imperfectly as that person would behave, not by waiting until you are ready. The crucial word in Aristotle's formulation is repeatedly, not perfectly, not impressively, not in conditions that guarantee success. Repeatedly. The imperfect attempt made consistently over time builds what the perfect plan held in perpetual reserve never could. It builds evidence, real, lived, personal evidence that you are capable of doing hard things under real conditions. And that evidence is the only thing that ever genuinely quiets self-doubt over the long term, because it is specific, and it is yours, and it is true, in a way that self-encouragement never fully is. Plutarch, the Greek biographer and moral philosopher whose writings bridge the ancient and modern worlds in a way that almost no other ancient thinkers do, wrote in his essay on progress in virtue, "The person who is making progress is the one who blames no one, not even themselves, when they fall short. They simply return to the work." He was describing something psychologically precise. Harsh self-judgment after failure. It is a different kind of avoidance. When you spend the energy that could go into returning to the work on punishing yourself for having failed, you are still not doing the work. The self-criticism feels like taking the failure seriously, but it is just another way of not moving forward. Progress is the practice of returning. Returning after the bad day, returning after the setback, returning after the version of the attempt that did not go the way you needed, without fanfare, without waiting to feel differently than you feel, without the perfect conditions that are never going to arrange themselves. Just the next small, real action, taken in the actual present moment, with the actual resources you currently have. That returning practiced daily is what compounds into transformation, and the internal peace that comes from it, from closing the gap between who you say you are and what you actually do day by day, is one of the quietest and most durable forms of satisfaction available to a human being. Principle 3. Practice gratitude as a discipline, not as a feeling. I want to address something about gratitude that is consistently misrepresented, because the misrepresentation sets people up to try it incorrectly, find it insufficient, and walk away concluding that it does not work for them. The conclusion is understandable, given how it is usually presented, but the conclusion is wrong. Gratitude is not a feeling you wait for. It is a practice you perform. That single distinction is the difference between something genuinely useful and something that sounds nice but changes nothing. Most people experience gratitude as a spontaneous emotion that arises when things go well. When the day is good, when circumstances are comfortable, gratitude appears naturally. But that kind of gratitude is so fragile as to be almost worthless as a tool for peace. It is entirely conditional on external circumstances behaving themselves. The moment something shifts, as it always does, that gratitude vanishes, and with it goes any peace that was resting on it. You have built your sense of stability on something that moves every time the world moves. Cicero, in his philosophical work De Amicitia, wrote, "Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all the others." He was not describing gratitude as a pleasant feeling. He was describing it as a foundational orientation toward life, a practiced way of seeing that, once established, changes the quality of everything else. Cicero's point was that a person who is genuinely grateful, not performatively, not conditionally, but as a trained and consistent way of engaging with their existence, has a different relationship with every other human experience. They are more generous, more courageous, more patient, more resilient. Not because gratitude creates those qualities directly, but because gratitude corrects the distortion that undermines them, the persistent, almost automatic human tendency to focus on what is absent, what is threatening, and what is wrong. Carl Jung wrote, in a passage from his collected works that receives very little attention compared to his more famous ideas, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." What Jung was pointing toward is the difficulty of genuine self-acceptance, which requires seeing yourself and your life whole, not just the parts that confirm your fears or your grievances or your sense of what is missing. Whole. Gratitude is the practice of seeing your life whole, of insisting, deliberately and against the brain's natural tendency toward threat detection, that the full picture be visible, not to deny the hard parts, not to pretend that difficulty is not real, but to refuse to let the difficulty be the only thing in the frame. The Stoic-aligned philosopher Epictetus's student, the historian Arrian, recorded something that Epictetus said in his teaching that goes far beyond the famous lines everyone knows. He said, "Seek not that the events of life be according to your wishes, but wish the events to be as they are, and you will find tranquility." But he went further than that and said, "The person who cannot be grateful for what they have been given will never find it in what they might be given." Gratitude, in other words, is not just about what you already have. It is a training of the attention that determines what you are capable of receiving at all. The practice itself is simple, but the simplicity should not be confused with easiness. Each morning, before the demands of the day have established themselves, name 3 specific things. Not general categories, but specific things. Not, "I am grateful for my family, but I am grateful for the exact conversation I had yesterday with someone I love, which I could have been too distracted to be present for, but chose not to be." Not, "I am grateful for my health, but I am grateful that this morning my body carried me from my bed to this moment without pain, which is not guaranteed, and which I have no right to expect, and which billions of people throughout history have not had." The specificity lands in the brain in a way that the vague general category never does. And on the hardest days, especially on those days, the practice becomes more important, not less. Not to pretend that hard things are not hard, but to insist that the hard thing not be the only thing. Principle 4. Practice. Small courage. Every day. This is where peace is actually built. There is a form of inner unrest so common and so persistent that most people have simply accepted it as the permanent background noise of being alive. It is the specific, low-level anxiety of avoidance, the quiet but constant weight of the conversation you have not had, the decision you have not made, the small fear that keeps appearing in exactly the same place every time you walk past it, and which you have been walking past long enough that you have stopped noticing it consciously, even though some part of you never stops carrying it. Avoidance does not feel like cowardice. It feels like reasonable caution, like waiting for a better moment, like not being quite ready yet. But the better moment is always slightly ahead of the present one, always just past the current level of discomfort, always available as justification for continuing to wait. And while you wait, the thing you are avoiding does not shrink, it grows, it accumulates weight. And more importantly, every day you do not face it. You send yourself a quiet but clear message about who you are, specifically about what you are capable of handling. That message, repeated daily, reshapes your self-conception in ways that are gradual but not trivial. Aristotle wrote in the Nicomachean Ethics, in a passage that is less quoted than his famous lines on virtue, but more practically important. The brave man is not the one who feels no fear, but the one who acts rightly in the presence of fear. He was making a distinction that cuts through every romantic idea about courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the disciplined continuation of action in the presence of fear. The person who waits until they feel fearless before they act will wait forever. The person who acts while afraid, who does the thing their values require while the discomfort is still present, is the one who eventually discovers that the fear itself was never as large or as permanent as it appeared. Plutarch, in his Lives of the Noble, Greeks and Romans, described an exchange between Themistocles, the Athenian general, and his young son, who asked him who was the most powerful man in the world. Themistocles thought for a moment and then said, "The Athenians command the Greeks. I command the Athenians. Your mother commands me, and you command your mother. So you, little one, are the most powerful of all." Plutarch used this story to illustrate the Stoic adjacent insight that power flows inward, not outward. The person who commands themselves, who governs their own responses, their own reactions, their own small daily choices, exercises a form of power that no external authority can replicate or remove. Carl Jung said, "You are what you do, not what you say you will do." He was describing the same mechanism Aristotle described, but from a different direction, through the lens of the unconscious. What you repeatedly do, Jung argued, is what you actually believe about yourself, regardless of what you consciously claim. If you say you value courage but consistently avoid the small things that require it, your psyche registers the behavior, not the statement. Your self-image is shaped by what you actually do. And the accumulated weight of avoidance, the steady diet of small retreats from the things that needed to be faced, builds an inner life that is smaller than the one you deserve. Small courage is the remedy, and I want to be precise about what small courage looks like, because the dramatic framing of the word courage is precisely what makes people discount their own capacity for it. It looks like speaking the honest thing when your voice is slightly unsteady, rather than carrying home what you did not say. It looks like admitting you were wrong, instead of defending a position you already know is not right. It looks like making the deferred decision instead of adding another day to the weight of the unresolved. It looks like saying no to something that does not serve your real direction when yes would be easier and safer. It looks like beginning today, imperfectly. The thing you have been talking about beginning for months. None of this looks heroic. In most cases, the only witness will be yourself. But the self is always watching, and Plato wrote in the Republic, "The measure of a man is what he does with power. But before external power, there is the power of the internal life, the authority a person has over their own attention, their own response, their own daily choices. That authority, exercised consistently in small moments, is what builds the inner life that peace actually lives in. Not the performance of peace. The real thing, steady, tested, durable, built through the accumulated practice of small courage, daily, in every moment that asks something of you that you would rather avoid." Heraclitus wrote, "Character is destiny, not the circumstances you were born into, not the luck of what arrived. The character you built through the choices you made when no one was watching. That character is available to you right now. It is being shaped by what you do in the next moment, and the one after that, and the one after that." Let me bring this together before we close, because I want you to walk away from this video with something more than a list of principles to remember. Peace is not waiting for you on the other side of solved problems. It is not the reward that arrives when your circumstances finally arrange themselves the way you need them to. It is not something that exists only for people whose lives are free from difficulty and loss and uncertainty. If it were, it would barely exist at all, because those lives are vanishingly rare and always temporary. Peace is constructed. It is built through the daily, largely invisible, unglamorous practice of accepting what cannot be changed and responding wisely to what can. Of moving through life with the flexibility that Heraclitus saw in water, not rigid, not brittle, not in constant argument with what is. Of showing up imperfectly in the real version of your life instead of waiting for perfect conditions that will never arrive. Of training your attention deliberately toward what is genuinely present and good instead of letting it default to what is missing and threatening. And of facing the small things that need to be faced instead of accumulating the quiet weight of what you have avoided. Carl Jung wrote, near the end of his life, something that I think is the most important summary of what all of these ancient thinkers were pointing toward. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who your circumstances made you, not who your fears kept you, who you actually are, the person beneath the avoidance and the perfectionism and the argument with reality. Steady, capable, present, and at peace with a life that will never be perfect and does not need to be. That person is not waiting for you in some future version of your life when everything is finally in order. That person is available now, in this moment, through the practice of these principles, applied to the actual life in front of you." Before you close this video, hit the like button if something in here reached you. Leave a comment below and tell me honestly which of these 4 principles you need to work on most right now. Not the comfortable answer, the real one. Share this with one person in your life who is carrying more than they need to. And subscribe to the Stoic Truth and turn on the notification bell, because next week we go even deeper into the ancient wisdom that the modern world has mostly forgotten and urgently needs. The life you want is not built in the moments when everything goes right. It is built in the moments when things do not go right, and you choose, anyway, to remain steady. Those moments are available to you every day, every single day. That is where your peace is waiting.